All right. Let's see who got that one correct first. All right, so the first person to get that one correct was BK. Okay, so that's going to be 200 points for BK. All right, let's try percentages to fractions for 100. Convert 23% to a fraction. All right, and the correct answer is going to be 23 over 100 or 23 hundredths. All right, so when you guys go from a percent to a fraction, the way that I teach it personally is I teach it as a two-step process. Most people will go with the notion that anytime I have a percent, I always put it over 100. The reason why I don't teach it that way is because if you guys come into contact with a percent that has a decimal, like for example, if it was 2.3 over 100, it will make it a little bit more complicated for you if you're a person that's not really well versed in math. So I'm going to show you guys how to do it in two steps. But again, if you're a person who kind of already understands the notion of going straight from percent to fraction, then that's fine. But the method that the way that I teach it, it works no matter what number they give you or what percentage they give you, whether it's decimals included or not. So the first thing I want to do is I want to convert my percent to a decimal. And then I'm going to go from my decimal to a fraction. Again, this is just a different way of doing it. All right, so when I want to go from a percent to a decimal, I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the left. So if you're dealing with a whole number, your decimal is always going to be at the end. I'm going to go once, twice to the left. So that's going to give me 0.23. All right, now I'm going to go from my decimal to my fraction. So the way that you create fractions when they're in decimal form, you can say the actual number and that lets you know what the denominator is going to be, or you can go based on how many values there are after the decimal. So if I read this out loud, this says 23 hundredths, which means of course I'll put it over 100. But if you're a person who doesn't know that, because I have two values after the decimal, that means I'm going to put it over 100. And I just put my 23 up top. So whenever I have one value after the decimal, I put it over 10. 2, we put it over 100. If I had 3 values after my decimal, we would put it over 1,000. All right, and of course, if you're someone who has the workbook, that's how it's presented to you. Always remember that despite how it may be presented, the way that I teach it, that's not the only way to do it. That's just something that I found. I found a mainstream way that was easier for people who struggle more so. But if you have a method that works for you every time, that's completely fine. All right, let's see who the first person was to answer this correctly. All right, and the first person answered this correctly was BK. Okay, I can't let BK come in and get all of the answers. All right, so 100 points for BK. All right, let's stay in percentages to fractions. All right, let's go percentages to fractions for 200. All right, it says convert 36% to a fraction in simplest form. So make sure it's in simplest form. All right, so convert 36% to a fractions in simplest form. So when you guys see simplest form, that means that you guys have to reduce it all the way down. Most of the time, fractions are reduced anyway, but just be aware that it could be presented to you whether it's reduced or not. All right, so the correct answer is going to be 9/25. So how do we get there? Same thing that we did last time. The extra step was just in the fact that you have to actually reduce. All right, so if we have 36%, the way that I teach it, which is, it doesn't mean you have to go this way, but it works no matter what value they give you, is we want to go from a percent to a decimal, and then we're going to go from our decimal to a fraction. All right, so if I have 36%, if I want to go to a decimal, I want to go 2 places to the left. So that's going to give me 0.36. All right, now I'm going to go from a decimal to a fraction. So because I have 2 values after the decimal, 36 is going to go over 100. All right, so from here, 36 over 100 has to be reduced down. That means that you guys have to find 2 values that can divide into 36 and 100 in order to make them smaller. The greatest common factor between 36 and 100 is 4. So I can divide that down by 4. If you're someone who struggles with reducing, just remember that for this test, it's a multiple choice test. So even if you get to 36 over 100, you can always compare against your answer choices by just putting everything in decimal form to see which one matches up. All right, so we do 36 divided by 4, we get 9, and 100 divided by 4, we get 25. All right, so who was the first person to get this one right? All right, the first person. Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna pronounce this right. I'm sorry, please correct me. It's R-U-K, is it Rook or Rook? I'm not sure, but let me know how to pronounce it correctly. That's those are
Rook.
Rook, okay, got it. All right, so those are gonna go to Rook, those 200 points. All right. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, so let's go into decimals to fractions, which is just piggybacking off what we just did. All right, convert 0.3 to a fraction. All right, convert 0.3 to a fraction. So the answer is 3/10. So remember what I told you guys, when we are converting from a decimal to a fraction, it's 2 different ways you can do it. You can actually say the value out loud, or you can count the number of values that are after your decimal. So here, if we just read this, it says it's 3/10, which means it would be 3 over 10 because we have the tenths there. But if you go by the number of values, because I have 1 value after my decimal, that means I'm going to put it over 10. And it's just 3 over 10. And this can't be reduced any further, so the correct answer is just 3/10. All right, and the first person to answer that correctly was Brooke. Okay, it's 100 points for you. All right, let's keep it moving. So it's still anybody's game. We still have tons of questions left to answer. All right, let's keep it in the same space. Decimals to fractions for 200. Convert 0.25 to a fraction in simplest form. So make sure it's in simplest form to get your points. All right, so the correct answer is going to be 1/4. So remember, when we are going from a decimal to a fraction, there's two different ways we can do it. We can say it out loud. So in this case, that would be 25 hundredths, which would let us know we put it over 100. Or you can count the number of values that are after the decimal. So if there are 2 values after the decimal, then that means we would put it over 100. All right, so simplest form for you guys means that you have to reduce. Now, just to let you know, more times than not, anytime you guys are actually dealing with fractions, you always have to reduce. Even if they don't tell you to reduce, that is a common practice that you should have. You should always reduce your fractions down to your lowest points. All right, and then here we have 25 over 100. So if we reduce down, we can say, we can divide both of those by 25. So that's going to give us 1/4. So say, for example, if you guys were on your test, right? And then we had A, B, C, D. And let's say for the answers, we had 1/3, we had 2/5, we had 1/4, and we had 1/9. And you were a person who struggled with simplifying fractions. What I would recommend that you do is convert the answer choices to decimals and see which one matches your answer in decimal form. So I know if I do 1/3 to a decimal, that's like saying 1 divided by 3, which is going to give me 0.333. It's going to keep going on. All right, so that doesn't match the 0.25. If I do 2/5, that's like saying 2 divided by 5, which gives me 0.4. That doesn't match, so that's not right. If I do 1 divided by 4, that's going to give me my 0.25, which matches here. So I always tell you guys, the test is 50% content, 50% strategy. If you can get to a certain point and to put it into fraction form, that's fine. But an easy way to do it, if you struggle with that, is just to convert all of your answers to decimals and just match it up that way. All right, so just make sure you pick something that works for you so that you're more efficient on your test. I know the questions seem like they're really easy, but it's a lot of people who miss simple questions like this all the time. So you want to make sure that you clean them up as best as possible. So you're not the person who's missing those points. All right, who got this one correct first? Okay, just Sean, the first person. So remember that it says simplest form. So you guys had to reduce it all the way down. All right, let's get your Sean on the board for 200 points. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, so we've gone over all the categories, but except for our mystery questions, I'll save those. But everybody should have a general idea as to how to do everything because everything is interrelated. All right, let's go fractions to decimals for 300. Convert 3 and 3 over 100 to a decimal. So this is a mixed number, 3 and 3 over 100 to a decimal. All right, the correct answer is going to be 3.03. So when we are going from a fraction to a decimal, that is pretty straightforward. Sometimes people have a really hard time when we are dealing with mixed numbers. So a mixed number is going to be a whole number and a fraction. So when you guys are converting from a mixed number to a decimal, the only thing you want to focus on is your actual fraction. This is where your actual conversion is going to come in at, and then you just bring your whole number over. So we know to go from a fraction to a decimal, we divide our top value by our bottom values. If I do 3 divided by 100, that's going to give me 0.03. And then our whole number just comes over, which makes it 3.03. All right, super simple. Another way that people approach it is some people will change their mixed number to an improper fraction and then divide that way. So if you did that, 3 times 100 gives you 300, plus 3 would give you 303 over 100. And then they would just divide that out. They would say 303 divided by 100. Which would give you the 3.03. So again, just make sure you find a method that works for you. The first method is, that's the way that I teach it. But if that's something that you're not comfortable with and you would rather do your conversion, that's fine. Doesn't really make that much of a difference. All right, the first person to get it right was, okay, I'm not sure if I'm gonna pronounce this right, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Puspa or Puspa? No, that's not right. Never mind. That was 0.03. It was Rook. My mistake. You just had the 0.03. All right, those questions go to Rook. All right, so we'll take a look at our scoreboard. At the bottom, we have BK with 400, Rook with 600, and we have Deshaun with 200. So still anybody's gained, plenty of points still left. All right, let's give out a good one. Decimals to percentages for 400. Convert 3.04365 to a percentage, round to the nearest hundred. Make sure you guys are rounding correctly, round to the nearest hundredth. All right, so the correct answer is going to be 304.37%. So how did we get the actual answer? First things first, whenever we go from a decimal to a percent, the only thing you have to do is move your decimal 2 places to the right. So once, twice, that's going to give us 304.365%. Now the question specified for us to round to the nearest hundredth. So anytime you guys are rounding, the very first thing you want to do is want to identify which place value is being rounded. So in this case, 6 is in a hundredths place. So we assess the value to the right of it. So because that's a 5, our 6 is going to increase to a 7. All right, so 0.37. So you can either have 304.37 or you can have 304.370. Still the same thing. Because everything behind the value is supposed to change to a 0, but it doesn't have to. Okay. All right, and I would encourage everybody who's here to still participate, even if you don't get the answer in first, because you want to make sure that you understand how to do something. It's easy to say you're following it when I'm breaking it down, but you want to kind of try to do the math yourself. So even if you don't get it correct, you can see where you made your mistake. All right, and the first person to get that one right was who? BK? All right, points go to BK. Y'all gonna let BK take all the points tonight? All right, let's go. All right, let's keep it a little light. We need some new people on here to get some more points. Can't just have the same 3 people. All right, let's go decimals to percentages for 100. Convert 0.23 to a percentage. All right, and the correct answer is going to be 23%. So how do we get that? Anytime we go from a decimal to a percentage, we are moving our decimal 2 places to the right. So if we have 0.23, we're going once, twice to the right, put our decimal at the end. So that's going to give us 23%. All right, and let's see who got that one right first. All right, and the first person to get that one right was BK. All right, let's go. Fractions to decimals for 400. Convert 8 2/3 to a decimal. Round to the nearest thousand. All right, and the correct answer is going to be 8.667. All right, so when we do questions like this, I think we already did one like this, go fraction to decimal. In this case, we are dealing with a mixed number. So when we're dealing with a mixed number, remember you just focus on the actual fraction when you're doing the conversion. So when we go from a fraction to a decimal, we just divide our top value by our bottom value. So if we do 2 divided by 3, that's going to give us 0.6 repeating. It's going to keep going on and on and on and on. All right, and then we're going to bring our 8 over. All right, but the question says you got to round to the nearest thousand. So I know the thousandth is going to be the third number from the decimal. So I assess the value to the right of it. So because that is a 6, the 6 in front of it will increase by 1 to a 7. So that's how we got 8.667. The reason why I keep adding the rounded in is because you guys will be surprised how many people are missing simple questions because they don't know how to round or they're rounded incorrectly. So you want to understand how small skills are still visible in other skills and how they roll into one another. All right, let's see. And who got that one right first? BK. All right, next category, we're gonna say decimals to fractions for 300. Convert 1.06 to a fraction in simplest form. So simplest form means you guys have to reduce. All right, so the correct answer is going to be 1 and 3 over 50, or 3/50. All right, so anytime we are going from a decimal to a fraction, in this case, we have a whole number that has been included. But when we're doing the actual conversion, the only thing you guys want to focus on is what comes after the decimal. All right, and then you end up just bringing your 1 over. So I know because I have 2 values after my decimal, they're going to go over 100. So I just put my 6 up top and I'm going to bring my 1 over. Now remember, it said in simplest form, meaning that you guys have to reduce it down. 6 and 100 are both even numbers, so I can reduce both of those by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 100 divided by 2 is 50. So that's how we got 1 and 3/50. All right, and then all this takes is more practice. Just make sure you guys are practicing, because as you guys can see, we're still in the same topic. So more people should really be getting answers correct. Oh, wait. Okay, well, I'll accept that. That's my mistake. I didn't specify whether to put it as a mixed number. So 1 and 3 over 50. Some people put it as a mixed number, which is cool. We do 1 times 50, which is 50 plus 3 is 53 over 50. So either one of those. And I believe the first person who got that correct was Rook, I believe. It was Rook. Perfect. All right, so remember, top 3 scores, so anybody can still get in on the game. All right, let's go. Percentages to fractions for 300. Convert 111% to a fraction. All right, and the correct answer is going to be 1 and 11 over 100, or 11 hundredths. All right, so when we go from a percent to a fraction, I do it in a 2-step form. I go from percent to decimal first, and then I go from a decimal to a fraction. All right, so we go from percent to decimal. If I have 111%, I move my decimal 2 places to the left. So that is going to give us 1.11. All right, and then from here, we're going to go from a decimal to a fraction. All right, so because I have 2 values after my decimal, that means they're going to go over 100. Then I just bring over my 1. So 1 and 11 hundredths. If you wrote it as a mixed number, that's fine too. So that would be 1 times 100, which is 100, plus 11 is 111 over 100. I'll take either one of those. All right, so let's see who got it correctly first. Okay, got a new person. Oh no, then she put it over 1,000. Okay, Rook was the first person to get it correctly. All right, let's go. Still can be anybody's game. All right, let's go percents to fractions for 400. Convert 2.5% to a fraction in simplest form. Simplest form. All right, so the correct answer is going to be 1/40 or 1/40th. So the way that we get that particular answer, remember when I do percent to fractions, I might do it in 2 steps. I go from a percent to a decimal first, and then from a decimal to a fraction. And this is one of the reasons why I teach it that way, just because if you end up getting a decimal, it makes it a little bit easier for you. All right, so if I go from a percent to a decimal, we know that means that I have to move my decimal 2 places to the left. All right, so see how I have an empty scoop here? So I have to add a 0 as a placeholder. So that's going to give me 0.025. All right, now I'm going to go from a decimal to a fraction. So in this case, because I have 3 numbers after my decimal, I'm going to put it over 1,000. All right, so 25 over 1,000. But remember, it had to be in simplest form. So simplest means you have to reduce it down. So if we say 25 over 1,000, those both can be reduced by 25. And that's how we got 1/40. All right, and who got that one correct first? Joe Sean. Good job. Good job, good job, good job. All right, almost done. All right, let's throw a mystery question in there. Let's see how you guys do. So this is gonna actually be a word problem. All right, Alan ate 2/5 of the cake. What percentage of the cake was left over? So perfect example how you guys can see this in word problem form. Let's see. All right, so the correct answer is 60%. That's what was left over. So how did we get that particular answer? Well, first things first, it says Alan ate 2/5 of the cake. All right, it says what percentage of the cake was left over? I think a mistake that people will tend to make is they overlook what's left over and they're just calculating what he actually ate. Well, it's a couple different ways you guys can approach this. I'll just do it this one way, but it's tons of different ways you guys can do it. All right, so if I know that he ate 2/5, but they're asking what percentage, which means they gave me a fraction, but my answer is going to be in percentage form. So that lets me know right there where my conversion is going to come in. So if I want to go from a fraction to a percent, 2-step process, I'm going to convert my fraction to a decimal first. So 2 divided by 5 is going to give me 0.4. And then I'm going to go from a decimal to a percent. So 2 places to the right, that's going to give me 40%. That lets me know how much he actually ate. The question wants to know how much is left over. So all percents are based off 100. 100 is another representation of 1, which means that 100% is what we always start with. And we're going to subtract what he ate to see what was left over. And that's how we got the 60%. So perfect example of how converting fractions, decimals, and percents can be presented to you guys in word form. You got to make sure you pull out the correct information and complete the correct math. No, everybody missed it. Everybody got 40. Yeah, so I can't, so I don't know if I specified this tonight, but normally I do. So I always go by the first answer that you pick, because BK had 40 first and then they changed it to 60, but I have to go by the first answer that you chose. So I hope everybody was able to kind of see where the mistake was made and understanding what they're asking you, what was left over. That means after he had already eaten it. All right. So making sure you guys understand context. This is a perfect example how everybody has the skills, meaning that you guys correctly converted from a fraction to a percentage, but you didn't understand what the question was asking you. Don't make that mistake when you guys get to your TEAS exam. All right, decimals to percentages for 300. Convert 3.1426 to a percentage, round to the nearest tenth. All right, the correct answer is 314.3%. So how did we get here? All right, anytime we go from a decimal to a percent, that means we're going to move our decimal 2 places to the right. So that becomes 314.26. All right, the question specifies to what percent. The question specifies round to the nearest tenth. So which value is in the tenth place? Our 2. So we assess the value to the right of it. So because that's a 6, 2 is going to increase by 1 up to 3.3%. Or it could be 314.30%. Same thing. All right, let's see who got that one correct first. 14.2. 27.2.2.2. Okay, so the first person to get that one correct was BK. All right, so make sure you guys are understanding how to round, because I think that's something that I'm seeing a big mistake everybody's making. You guys aren't rounding to the correct decimal place. All right, so make sure you guys are watching that. All right, and anybody can still get on the board. Remember, the top 3 scores are the people who get the prize, so anybody could still join. All right, let's say fractions to decimals for 200. Convert 3/8 to a decimal. All right, and the correct answer is going to be 0.375, or if you put 0.375, that is fine as well. So remember, anytime we go from a fraction to a decimal, the only thing that you guys have to do is you have to divide your top value by your bottom value. So that's like saying 3 divided by 8, which will give us 0.375. And then remember, for this test, there is a 4-function calculator built into the exam. So you guys will be just fine. I would suggest inputting as much as you can into the exam, just because everybody works a little differently under a time constraint, and you want to avoid making an easy mistake. All right, and the first person to get that right was Rook. No, not Rook. Was that BK? My bad. Yeah, that was BK. All right, let's go. Mystery question for 200. A door measure is 8 1/4 feet tall and 3 2/5 feet wide. What is the total distance around the door? Must include units in your answer. All right, so let's see what the correct answer is. So the correct answer is going to be 23.3 feet. All right, so it says a door measures 8 1/4 feet tall and 3 2/5 feet wide. What is the total distance around the door? All right, so in terms of context, you want to make sure you understand what's going on in the actual question. So they want to know what's the total distance around. That lets you know that we are dealing with the perimeter. All right, and anytime we're dealing with the perimeter of a shape, that means that we're going to add all of the sides together. All right, well, we know, of course, a door has how many sides? A door has 4 sides. So we know that if it's 8 1/4 feet tall on one side, it has to be the same height on the opposite side. If it's 3 2/5 feet wide up top, then it's going to be 3 2/5 feet wide on the bottom. All right, and then remember, because we're dealing with perimeter, that means we add up all the sides. So an easy way to do the math is to convert all of our fractions to decimals and do it that way, so it's not so cumbersome. I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to. You can add them as fractions if you like. It doesn't matter. I didn't specify which way to actually, which way to put the answer, decimal or fraction, but it doesn't matter, whichever one it was. All right, so if I have 8 1/4 and I want to convert that to a decimal, remember I focus on my actual fraction. So if I do 1 divided by 4, that's going to give you 0.25. So that's 8.25. And then if I do 2 divided by 5 here, that's going to give you 0.4. So that's 3.4. So we're going to say 8.25 plus 8.25 plus 3.4 plus 3.4. All right, and let me double check that to make sure. 8.25 plus 8.25 plus 3.4 plus 3.4. Yep, and that's going to give us 23.3 feet. All right, so this is an example of something you guys could see in terms of the geometry aspect of it, but see how that conversion factor still came into play. So converting between fractions, decimals, and percents is something that you guys could see across other topics. So again, you want to make sure it's something that you guys actually master. And did we get anybody who 133 over 20? Is that correct? Oh no, they gave us 6. All right, so no points on that one. All right, almost done. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions left. All right, decimals to fractions for 400. Convert 0.125 to a fraction in simplest form. All right, and the correct answer is 1/8. All right, so how did we get that particular answer? So when we go from a decimal to a fraction, remember we count the number of values after the decimal, or you can say it out loud. So because there are 3 values after the decimal, that lets me know I'm going to put it over 1,000. And then we reduce from here. So 125 and 1,000 can both be divided by 125. And that's going to give us 1/8. All right, and the person who got that one correct first was Jashawn. Perfect. All right, let's see. Mystery question for 300. Kevin can paint one wall in 30 minutes. His brother can complete the same task in 22 minutes. If they work together, how long will it take them to paint one wall? This is an example of what's considered a rate of work question. And it's possible that you can see it for your exam. All right, so I see you guys are having a tough time with this one, so let's go ahead and see. All right, it says Kevin can paint one wall in 30 minutes. His brother can complete the same task in 22 minutes. If they work together, how long will it take them to paint one wall? Round answer to the nearest 10th. All right, so again, this is an example of what's considered a rate of work question. If you have the workbook, this is going to be located in cluster 4, solving real world problems, include irrational numbers. All right, so anytime you guys are given a rate of work question, the giveaway is that if they ask you if somebody is working together, how long will it take them to complete it? So what I like to do is I like to create a fraction. I always multiply my two values at the top and add them on the bottom. All right, so we have 30 minutes, and then we have 22 minutes, then we have 30, and we have 22. And then from here, we just simplify. So if we do 30, I ain't even supposed to. Right. The right answer was 12.7 minutes, but we still do the same setup. So if we do 30 times 22, you get 660. And then if you do 30 plus 22, you get 52. All right, and then this is a fraction, but we need to change it to decimal form. So see how that convergence still comes back into play? All right, divided by 52, which gave us 12.692, but the question wanted us to round to the nearest 10th. So we underline the value in the 10th place, which is 6, assess the value to the right, which is 9. So because that's a 9, 6 increases by 1 to 7. So 12.7 minutes. And I believe Jashawn was the person who got that one right. He had to say, I don't know. It's okay. All right, so Jashawn did get that one correct. Yeah, BK, you were close. You have to switch it the other way around. So you guys multiply your values up top and add them on the bottom. And then you go ahead and simplify. And again, if you have the book, this is in cluster 4, solving real world problems involving rational numbers. And if you don't have the book, you should get the book so that you make sure you sharpen up on these types of skills. All right, so we have BK with 1,800, Rook with 1,200, and Jashawn with 1,300. All right, let's go fractions to decimals for 500. Convert 22 over 7 to a decimal, round to the nearest 100,000. All right, so the correct answer is 3.14286. All right, so for this one, you had to make sure you understood your decimal places in order to be able to round. So anytime we go from a fraction to a decimal, we just divide the top number by the bottom number. So if we do 22 divided by 7, this is actually the fraction for pi. So 22 divided by 7, it's going to give us 3.14285. And it's like a whole bunch of other numbers, but we're just gonna stop right there. All right, so 100,000. That is gonna be tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. 100,000. All right, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Fifth value from our decimals. So we assess the value to the right of it. So because that is a 7, 5 is going to increase by 1 to 6. All right, and who got that one right first? Rook. Okay. All right, last 5 decimals to percentages for 500. Lisa ate 0.52 pounds of a 1 pound peanut bag. What percent of the bag was left over? What percent was left over? All right, and the correct answer is 48%. So how did we get there? It says Lisa ate 0.52 pounds of a 1 pound peanut bag. What percent of the bag was left over? So they gave us the value in decimal form, but the question is asking for the answer in percent form. And the key here is that they want to know what was left over. So we know what she ate, but we need to figure out what was left over. So first things first, let's convert our decimal to a percent. So if she ate 0.52 pounds, we're gonna go 2 places to the right, which is gonna give us 52%. That's what she ate. If you wanna know what was left over, remember percents are based off 100. So we subtract that, and that's how we end up with 48%. All right, and who got that correct first? BK. All right, let's see. Mystery question for 400. 3 2/3 decameters is equal to how many millimeters? Round your answer to the nearest 100. All right, and the correct answer is going to be 36,666.67 millimeters. All right, so this is an example of conversions within a system, which is something that we covered in the group all last week. So you guys should be, if you've been keeping up, pretty well versed in this. All right, so first things first, if I want to go from, well, we need to convert our fraction to a decimal first. So I know if I'm dealing with 3 2/3, which is a mixed number, I focus on my fraction, convert that to a decimal. So 2 divided by 3 gives us 0.6 repeating. It's gonna keep going on and on and on and on. So I'm not gonna write out all the spaces because we don't, well, we do really need all of them. It's gonna keep going on and on and on and on. All right, so if I want to go from decameters to millimeters, remember we do conversions within the system. We go by King, Henry, died by drinking chocolate milk. All right, so decameters is here, millimeters is here. So that lets me know I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4 places to the right in terms of my decimal. 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4. All right, so we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4 places to the right. So that's gonna give us the 36,666.666. All right, want us to round to the nearest 100. All right, the second 6 is in the hundreds place. So evaluate to the value to the right of it. So because that's a 6, that's going to increase by 1 to 7. So 36,666.67. All right, so make sure for sure you guys know how to do those conversions within a system because they will not give you that conversion factor. You have to know that. All right. Close, but no one got the actual answer. All right, last 3 for 500. All right, percentages to fractions for 500. Convert 0.45% to a fraction in simplest form. All right, let's see. And the correct answer is 9/2000. So how did we get to 9 2/1000? All right, so when we go from a percent to a fraction, the first thing we want to do is we want to convert our percent to a decimal. So if we have 0.45%, when you go from a percent to a decimal, you go 2 places to the left. All right, so because we have that empty scoop there, we have to add a 0 as a placeholder. So that gives us 0.0045. All right, when we go from a decimal to a fraction, we always count the number of values after our decimal. So because there are 4 values after our decimal, we are going to put that over 10,000. All right, and then we have to be able to reduce it down. So 45 and 10,000 both have 5 in common. So if I divide that by 5 and divide by 5, gives me 9/2000. All right, and I doubt if you guys see values this big for your exam, just something that is a little more challenging, I would say. All right, and BK got that one correct. Did you put that before or after? All right, last two. Oh, okay, you were late when you typed it in. Okay, so I gotta take those off. Okay, decimals to fractions for 500. Convert 4.0031 to a fraction in simplest form. All right, and the correct answer is going to be 4 and 31 over 10,000. All right, and how did we get that actual answer? Don't let the big numbers scare you because it's still the same idea. So when I go from a decimal to a fraction, I focus on the number of values after my decimal. So in this case, because there are 4 values after the decimal, we're going to put it over 10,000. All right, and then we'll just bring our 4 over. All right, in this case, that can't be reduced down, so that's the simplest form. And BK was the only person who answered that one. Y'all can't let the big numbers scare y'all, I promise y'all. The same process. All right, and last one for 500. So this is our last mystery question. Jakar purchased 2 bananas, 89 cents each, 3 apples, 2 for $1, and 1 bag of grapes, $4.99. If the sales tax rate is 6.5%, how much will she pay in tax? Round to the nearest cent. All right, and the correct answer is 54 cents or 0.54. All right, so let's go ahead and let's do the math on this. All right, so Jakara purchased 2 bananas at 89 cents each, 3 apples, 2 for $1, and 1 bag of grapes for $4.99. If the sales tax rate is 6.5%, how much will she pay in tax? So before we can figure out exactly how much the tax is, we need to figure out what's the total of all of the items that she has. So I know I have 2 bananas at 89 cents. So I need to rewrite that in the proper form. 89 cents. We have 3 apples, which are 2 for $1. So if apples are 2 for $1, then I can say that 1 apple is going to be 50 cents. All right, and then 1 bag of grapes for $4.99. So if we have 2 bananas at 89 cents, and we're saying 2 times 89 cents, which gives us $1.78. So that's going to be for the bananas. All right, we have 3 apples, so they're all 50 cents each. That's going to be $1.50. And then our grapes for $4.99. All right, so if we add all those values together, that's going to tell us what her total is before tax. So $6.49. That's going to be our total. All right, so if we want to figure out how much the actual tax is, we need to multiply that times the tax rate, which is going to be the 6.5%. All right, so of course, if you guys are familiar with these types of questions, we can't do the actual math while the value is in percent form. We have to convert that percent to a decimal. All right, so we have to say 6.49 times, if we do 6.5% to a decimal, that means you're going to move it 2 places to the right. It's going to give us 0.065. All right, and if we multiply those together, that gives us, wait, I'm not doing that right. 0.42. Okay, hold on, I didn't do something right. 0.89. 827. Oh, did I add that wrong? 1.78 plus 150 plus 4. Okay, 827. I don't know where I got that from. Okay, thank you for pointing that out. What is wrong with this thing? Okay, scratch that. I'm just going to the other side. All right. We know the total is going to be 827. So we're going to multiply that times the 6.5%. So we know that we have to change the percent to a decimal in order to actually do the math. It's going to give us 0.065, which is going to give us 0.537. All right, and the question says round to the nearest cent. So nearest cent is always the hundredths place. So we underline our 3, assess the 7. So because that's the 7, the 3 is going to increase by 1 to 4. Now, one mistake that people make on this question is they confuse what the question is asking. 54 cents is what we pay in tax. Another way you can see this question, it may ask you what's your total including tax. So you want to make sure you understand the difference. All right. And the person who got that one correct was Brooke. All right, so thank y'all so much for participating tonight. So our final scores, we have BK in the lead with 2,800, Brooke in second place with 2,200, and Joshawn in third place with 1,300. So before you guys exit out, send me a direct message of your email address, and I will email you guys over your code for your prize from me tonight. So thank you guys so much for participating. I hope y'all enjoy convergence between fractions, decimals, and percents. Even though it can seem like an easy task, it's very easy to make a mistake in terms of doing this. So make sure you guys are reviewing these questions. If you have the book, it's located in cluster 1. If you don't have the book, make sure you guys check it out while we have it on promo this month for Black History Month. Everything that we have on the website is actually on sale. So do I have any questions tonight before we log off? Any questions in reference to this topic and converting between fractions, decimals, and percents? We will be reviewing that for the remainder of the week. So all of the questions and videos that I post for the remainder of the week are going to include this particular topic. All right, well, you guys are welcome. Thank y'all so much for participating. So remember, again, if you were one of the 3 people with the points, send me your emails now so that I can send you your prize. All right, so no questions about the questions from tonight. Those are pretty much what you would see in terms of how it's presented on a test. It is very straightforward. So basically what you see is what you get. All right, so no questions before we get out of here. Joshawn, I'm still waiting on your email. I know how to find you on Facebook though. All right, well, thank y'all so much for participating tonight. And make sure you guys check out all of our practice questions and everything this week, and all of our tutorials and all of that good stuff. All right, you guys have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.